Hey everybody, welcome back to Sorky Farmstead. So most of you are used to me. My name is Samantha. I am the owner and operator of a 2-acre farmstead located in Southeast Louisiana. Now, what makes me different? I don't like chemicals. I want everything organic. I want it all natural. If I'm going to put a chemical in my body, folks, I'd like to know what it is and give my consent for it. So what I've decided to do is go one step further with my knowledge base. I have invited an expert in the field of what we're going to be discussing today, because here's the topic of the video. What you didn't know could kill you. So I'm very excited. I'm going to introduce to you somebody that I have known for 33 years, guys. He is a leader in his profession and was awarded distinction of having the most outstanding practice in an international practice excellent competition all the way back in 2008. You want to know what his reward was? A Porsche Cayman S sports car, right? I'd like to win an award like that one day. People worldwide have sought out this doctor because of his high success rates, unique and non-invasive treatment methods, educational background, multiple postdoctorate certifications, and his overall approach to natural, non-prescriptive healthcare. You heard me right. Folks, I have a doctor here with me today that's going to talk to you who has not been bought out by big pharma. Because, right, like big ag, nobody wants anything to do with these folks anymore. This doctor's I'm about to introduce to you has a waiting list practice, which means people are waiting to get in his front doors, guys. All of you guys know that this is near and dear to my heart because I'm more of a naturalist. I'm more of a constitutionalist. I'm more of a, let's go back to the way it was meant to be type person that I am throwing a band-aid on a problem. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome a board certified chiropractic internist and certified nutritional pathology functional medicine practitioner, Dr. Keith Currie, to my platform. Dr. Currie, we're going to start with the most obvious. What is a chiropractic internist?
Well, good morning, Samantha. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you.
Well, a chiropractic internist is a doctor that has received advanced training in the diagnosis and management of internal disorders. You know, medical doctors go through 4,000 something hours of doctorate level education, and so do chiropractors. But then after you complete school, you can, choose to go in a different direction if you want to. And one of the postdoctorate certifications that I chose to go after and receive is being a board certified chiropractic internist. What I do is I do deep dive testing with all of my patients. I always say, it's not hard to be number one. Good doctors know what to do. Great doctors know why. And with my patients, I'm always looking to try to figure out the reason why they're dealing with what their health challenges are. And then I don't treat disease. So I think that's very, very important, right? Because the FDA says you can't do that. So we don't do that. What I do is I run the adequate testing on a patient to figure out why their body is inflamed or why it's not working right, and then put together nutritional strategies, lifestyle, diet modifications, so on and so on, to help them improve their health. And it's phenomenal. And I'm also a nutritional pathologist, as you mentioned, functional medicine practitioner. So that's another certification, and I'm working towards getting another certification that's in clinical nutrition. And so there's just so many different things. Usually I'm enrolled. I guess I'm a habitual learner.
Me too.
Yeah.
Me
And
too.
I think I probably spent close to $1 million on my education.
Right.
And I'm continuing just going and going and going, trying to shove as much stuff in here as I can so that whenever a patient comes to me and they're at a loss for what is going on with them, that maybe somewhere, somehow, some way, I learned something that I could help that person reclaim their health and their quality of life. And it's incredible. But the cool thing is, what I enjoy about it is it's not hocus pocus, mumbo jumbo. Hey, take this and you're healed, or this or
Right.
that. It's, hey, the body's inflamed. Things aren't working right. The labs show us that. But here's what you do to help the body get healthier. And then if someone reverses their type 2 diabetes, or if someone goes on and their thyroid function improves, or their other endocrine functions improve, or if they lose weight, or if their constipation goes away, or if their cognitive function. Oh my gosh, I'm seeing so many patients that have like cognitive decline, and that's really, really becoming a real thing. And when
Okay,
you
so I
get the
don't mean to
body
interrupt.
headed in
Yeah,
the right direction, here we go. And that they're raving over their improvement, and they're less brain fog, more energy, better. They're clicking, they're going, like they're not getting confused or sidetracked. It's incredible. And I'm just really enjoying my practice. I just went over 20 years and I feel like I just shifted into second gear.
I know. And I wanted to ask you, when you say cognitive function, I don't think people really understand this. Autism was not a thing 30 years ago. It was like a whisper on the wind, right? And I don't think people understand this either. All these memory problems, Alzheimer's, all of that, like that is in the last 60 to 70 years, those diseases have come on the market. They're brand new, folks. Our forefathers
Hmm.
did not deal with either of those diseases. So when you're talking cognitive function, when I hear you say that, I'm thinking brain fog, memory, my ability to recall, my ability to process information. And I would say in this day and age where we're overwhelmed with immediate information constantly, it would be a bonus for you to be able to process that appropriately, right?
Yes, absolutely. And what I always tell my patients is every piano has Mozart in it.
That's
Okay.
right.
It's there in the piano. Now, you may be able to sit down at that piano and play a beautiful sonata that could bring someone to tears. But I would sit down at that piano and it would be chopsticks. Okay.
Right.
So the reality of it is the DNA in our bodies will, everybody says, well, it's genetic, right? They look to the genetic component. Well, the genes have always been there. Okay. And genes express. And so one of the things that I really look at is the field of epigenetics. Epigenetics is how those genes express. And so you have your DNA, right? And the DNA is going to express good things or bad things. And so we're going to talk about heavy metals today, but that's just one example of many. It could be that someone's eating too much sugar and creating reactive oxygen species and creating issues with the DNA expressing bad things. Just because your aunt has diabetes, your mom has diabetes, your uncle has it, your mom and your dad, your sisters and brothers, your cousins have diabetes, people say, oh, I'm bound to have diabetes because it's genetic. But the reality of it is people can make decisions that can help those genes stay off or turn on, and those pro-inflammatory pathways and cycles. And so that's the beauty of it is it's the root to fruit graphic, where if you have a tree and you have roots down here, and those roots have toxins and chemicals and heavy metals and pesticides and all these other things, the high fat diet, the high sugar diet, so on and so on, nutritionally depleted foods. You go on and on and on. Well, then in turn, guess what? The fruit at the top is going to be bad because the tree trunk is the DNA, and that's how it's trying to express. And it's going to express bad things. If it's got bad stuff going in, it's going to have bad stuff coming out.
I
I
was I
often
was going
say
to
it's kind of
tell
like
you.
if you give a Ferrari, yes, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I wanted to tell you what you just said. Guys, I can prove what Dr. Currie just said. Right now in Lahaina, where the fire was in August of 2023, there are, because it is a tropical island, there are fruiting trees that have been in this area. Some of those trees are 100 years old. They have found that the 17% that did not die after the fire, any of the fruit that's being produced, the wild animals, the birds, the squirrels, nothing will eat it. The fruit falls to the ground and it's rotting right there. Nothing, not even insects, fruit flies, nothing's touching that fruit. And the reason is it has absorbed all the toxins and heavy metals from that fire. And even the smallest of organisms knows that that is toxic fruit.
Yeah, and that's something. Yeah,
It's
so that's a
crazy.
perfect example. Good job, Samantha.
Yeah, it's really a crazy thing. But you mentioned that you're going to talk about heavy metals today to us, because I was telling you I'm writing a book. I'm finding people are extremely concerned with how are they ever going to be able to grow food when we know that they're cloud seeding, that they are manipulating the weather, that we have things like forever chemicals, PFAS is coming down. Our water is toxic. There's mercury, in you can't even eat tuna without somebody being mercury. So there's heavy metals everywhere. And you being an expert in nutrition as well as how the human body functions, what have you found out that you want to share with people today? What is it that you know that they don't, that they need to know?
Well, we're going to have some fun today. I'll tell you, for me, it's kind of interesting because one of the things that we're going to talk about is lithium, right? Because with all of my patients, if I have a patient that comes into me and they're dealing with certain health issues, I'm like, hey, look, you know what we're going to do first is we're going to work on your liver, because the liver is the foundation of health. It does over 500 jobs in the body. It cleans and filters the blood. It alone removes toxins from the blood. There's Kupffer cells in the liver, which are macrophages, which are specialty type Y blood cells that only live in the liver. They don't live anywhere else. It's kind of like the microglia that are the immune cells that are in the brain. They're only found in the brain. Well, you have the same thing in the liver, a different type of white blood cell that's going to clean and filter the blood and try to kill bad things that don't belong there and convert them into less damaging things for the body. So we talk about bile, liver makes bile, vitamin D, cholesterol. Um, it recycles old worn out red blood cells. So the big thing is when we look at heavy metals and other toxins and pollutants, is the liver is going to take those through phase 1 and phase 2 detoxification. So for example, in phase 1, if a heavy metal comes in, the first phase of that is that there's some enzymes in the liver that they're going to take and reduce those and convert them over and try to make them less damaging to the body, and then create metabolites out of them. This is just the easy version. Metabolites are the breakdown products of these toxic things. Well, then in turn, that can also create reactive oxygen species, which are free radical electrons that then in turn do damage to cells in the body. So even in the process of trying to make something less damaging to our body, the liver can actually create damaging byproducts of that.
Yeah.
But then those things, once it tries to decrease the damage, then it passes it to phase 2, where then phase 2 tries to make those fat soluble substances into water soluble substances so that you can excrete them. And the way that we excrete things from our body, we breathe them out, we sweat them out, we urinate them out, or we
Yeah.
defecate them out. And so those are the things. But if those toxins can't be converted over, then they get retained in the body. You're going to eliminate some, but there's also going to be a certain amount of retention. And I believe that God created our bodies and he made them. We're a miraculous wonder of creation.
Yeah.
And our bodies were created to try to protect themselves for survival.
Yeah.
So in the case of these toxins, it's interesting. The liver cleans and filters the blood, right? It has its own immune system that kills bad things that come in. But then in addition to that, the liver is also the number one storage unit of fat in the body. So someone could be a non-alcoholic. You don't have to be an alcoholic to have fatty liver disease. That's why we're hearing all about this non-alcoholic fatty liver disease that everybody's getting.
Yeah.
Well, the reality of it is when someone is toxic, the liver tries to detoxify, but then it also packages those toxins and stores them in fat. Well, guess what? You're
Ooh.
storing toxins inside of fat because the fat protects the toxins, protects your body from those
Holy
toxins.
smokes. Oh my God, you just blew my mind. Wait,
Mhm.
wait, wait. Let me see if I can break this down. I take in toxins. I'm skinny, but I'm taking in toxins. My liver says, whoa, I can't do this anymore. This woman's overloading me. So it packages up my toxins and fat in my liver. So all of a sudden now I've got fatty liver disease, but I'm skinny. Our bodies are
And you're storing
miracles.
toxins. Now keep in mind, it's gonna try to do phase 1 and phase 2 detoxification and then go on for elimination. But if the liver's not healthy and it can't do phase 1 and phase 2 the way that it should, well, then the second best thing is to package it and store it in fat so that you're not going to
Right.
have so much damage to your body.
Wow.
Yep.
Wow,
Yeah.
Dr. Currie.
For
Wow.
me also, it's really kind of interesting. Like we're gonna all come in contact with metals. I
Mhm.
mean, 91 of the 118 elements on the periodic table of elements, 91 of the 118 elements are metals. Okay. So it's everywhere. It's in your underwear, it's in your shirt, it's everywhere. Okay. But can your liver handle it? Can your body handle it? What's it going to do with it when it does come in contact with it? And that's the big thing right now, is because I feel like that the American society is literally almost kind of being groomed towards poor health, because everywhere you go, you're just coming in contact with all these toxins. But all the things that we're given, I mean, with the foods, like you mentioned earlier, 60 years ago, 30 years ago, there weren't certain conditions, but these conditions are there now. Well, we've never lived in a more toxic world than we're living in now. But also, besides that, the foods that we're eating are nutritionally depleted. Even if you're going to a big box store and getting organic foods, so many of those organic foods that, yeah, they don't have the pesticides, but guess what? There's going to
Right.
be some cross contamination. There's going to be some GMO stuff there. There's going to be the nutrients aren't in the soil from all the constant turnover and continuous farming. And they're trying, but the farmers can't win, especially when, all this other stuff is going on. And so that's why with my patients, we do a lot of supplementation along with diet changes and exercise and meditation, detoxification. There's a lot that's involved in helping someone be healthier in today's time, because you can't do it with diet alone.
No, no. And I'm so glad that you said that. I tell everybody when I started the journey of growing food, I never wanted to grow food like anybody else. I wanted my food to be different in the sense that one apple a day would keep the doctor away. But to reach that level of nutritional density, just like you just said, to reach that level of soil remediation, I'm in my third year of babying my soil, of bringing, organic chicken manure, and rabbit manure, even blood out to my garden to lift and increase the bacterial load in the soil, very much like you see people on a movement to increase the bacterial load inside of your stomach, your second brain, because we are understanding as time goes by that bacteria are not always bad, folks. And we're steadily killing the biomes around us. Like we're on this, Americans are the biggest killers in the world. I mean, we want to aside everything, pesticide, fungicide. You know what I'm saying? It's like we won't stop with these toxins. And so, if you were to pick any one metal, which one do you think right now might be the most dangerous or the most commonly um, overloaded with humans right now, especially in America?
Well, so check this out. If it's okay with you, I'd like to take a little side note here, because you set me up without even realizing it, on a couple of
Spirit.
different topics. On every single patient, on every single patient, Samantha, I run a stool test. It's not usually the first thing that I do. It's in their treatment plan, but we're going to look at their microbiome, because you can have too many good bacteria, you can have too many bad bacteria, but guess what? You can have not enough of either as well. There's a commensal balance. There's a balance in your microbiome. Like, for example, we all have E. coli, but
Yes.
there's pathogenic strains of E. coli, but you need a E. coli. The
Mm-hmm.
same thing holds true. um, I have a lot of nurses, registered nurses, that are my patients. Actually, in my functional medicine practice, over half of the people that are my patients are RNs, which is crazy, but it's the truth. Okay. And they find their way to me. They don't want the traditional route. They want to find alternatives. They want to get healthier. They're in that system, and they seek outside that system. Now, I mean, there are some that are all about it, right? And then there are others that come to me that are not. And so the thing about that specifically, I did a stool test on one of my RNs a few months ago, and she had her report come back that said she had way too many commensal good bacteria, which
Hmm.
can cause its own set of problems.
Yeah.
So there is a balance there that we have to strike in helping someone become healthy. The thing about the apple a day, I was smiling when you said that, because with every new patient right out of the gate, I do a deep dive blood work, like the most thorough blood workup that most of them have ever seen. But then I also run tests for IgG antibodies and IgA antibodies for food sensitivities, or what we call food intolerances. Now, that's
Hmm.
totally different than a food allergy, because a food allergy is the IgE antibody response. You eat something, it kills you, shuts you
Yeah.
down, right? That's a true allergy. A food sensitivity or intolerance is different. It drops chronic inflammation in the body. It can cross
Yes.
the IgG antibodies they're ubiquitous. They can go anywhere in the body. They can cross the blood-brain barrier. They can
Yep.
do all kinds of things. Well, I had a patient that we ran food sensitivities on, and she was doing, before she came to me, she was doing all of these things to try to save her gallbladder because she didn't want to have it taken out. And so she was doing an apple fast, apple sauce, apple cider vinegar, apple everything all day, every day, trying
She
to
was
rescue her
food
gallbladder.
sensitive.
And then when she came back and had a food sensitivity to apples when she became my new patient. And I was like, oh my gosh. So what that also told us was that she had rampant amounts of leaky gut
Yeah.
hyperpermeability. And so, that's what that showed me. But that's the thing. An apple a day keeps the doctor away if you're not having gut hyperpermeability and an immune
Yes.
reaction to that apple per day.
That's
Everyone
right.
is different. And so that is really important. The other thing, cardiovascular disease. I mean, we're going to talk about heavy metals here, but cardiovascular disease is the number one killer in America over all forms of cancer combined annually. You take all forms of cancer and put them into one bucket, and cardiovascular disease is going to kill more people than that. So we're talking strokes and heart attacks and high blood pressure. Well, one of the reasons I mentioned earlier, I run food sensitivities and intolerances on every new patient. That's because there is the inflammatory component that's there,
Yeah.
but then there's also the side of things where your immune system, food sensitivities can literally activate an inflammatory cytokine called interleukin 6. Interleukin 6 in turn can activate, and the liver makes that. So here we go back to the
Yeah.
liver, right? And so then that can elevate what's called high sensitivity C reactive protein. High sensitivity C reactive protein is called cardio C reactive protein by most labs because it specifically is inflammatory to the inner lining of your arteries. So the foods that you eat could be activating interleukin 6, elevating high sensitivity C reactive protein, inflaming your arteries, causing you to be at a risk for a stroke or a heart attack. Like, that's real. And
Yeah.
so when you identify those things and then say, hey, look, don't eat spinach, don't eat this, don't eat that, because that's what your test said that you should not eat, then we start nailing those kinds of things down, and people start getting less inflamed and they start feeling better. So I
Really.
did do a little side note there, but I felt that it was important.
I do too. And I want to make a point because it is important. Folks, listen, we live in a culture where if you want it, you can get it. So, what am I saying? 60 years ago, people ate regional food. If you lived in South Louisiana, you were raised on okra and tomatoes and corn and greens. You did not have oranges, or I mean, not necessarily oranges, but like avocados. You didn't have these specialized foods coming in from, Guatemala. That's important because you're opening yourself up to foods and food products that you don't know if you're going to be sensitive by the way your body is made, because no one in your family prior to you was ever maybe tried that food. See, like some people, they know what foods to stay away from because mom couldn't tolerate it, and it's got a trail behind it. But the more globalized we've become, the more options for you to eat, the higher the risk. Your body's simply not going to like what you're putting in your mouth,
Yeah.
and it's
So
harder
what's
to narrow it down.
absolutely. So I like to joke a lot. I like to laugh a lot. And I like to tell stories. I'm an educator. I'm a teacher, just like you, Samantha.
Mhm.
I educate my patients. I believe that an educated patient is an empowered patient
That's right.
and is going to have a way, way, way better chance of being successful. Now, what's so funny is I do use a lot of stories. And one of the things that I can't believe you said avocado. you said God would lead this interview, and I guess that's what's happening
Yeah,
because
he will.
my my dad, whenever he was little, he grew up in Houston, Texas. Okay, so he likes to tell this story how he went to stay with his older brother out in California for a little while, and there were these things in the yard by this tree, and my dad was picking them up and hitting them with a baseball bat, and that the lady next door came over and saw him doing that and told him that those were poison and that he shouldn't be touching them and that she would take them all. And come to find out, they were avocados.
Worth so much money too.
Yeah. That's
Look,
awesome.
people are going to find a way. They're going to find a way. Keith,
Yeah.
well, I called you Keith. Guys, just to inform you, this is actually my brother-in-law. So when I tell you I trust him with giving you folks this knowledge, I do it. It's more than I think that he's smart, is that I know that he's good at what he does. So let me go back to your professional
I
title,
got your
Dr.
question. I got your
Currie,
question.
right?
Go ahead.
If people wanted to reach out to you and engage you as their physician, as their nutritionist or whatever they need, how can they contact you?
Okay. So they can go to Doctor, spelled out Doctor, Currie, Currie, not with a Y. It's Dr. Currie, all spelled out, Doctorcurrie.com. That's the best place to go. I've written some articles that are published on there, just educational type things, and it gives a little more information about my clinic. I ask that people be patient. It's not always easy to get in. I do my best, but there's only one of me, and I'm very, very busy. My schedule stays full, and my appointments, my patient appointments. I mean, I spend a 50-minute therapeutic clinical hour with a patient, and there are only so many hours in the day,
That's
and
right.
I have a lot of patients, and so usually most of my treatment plans are 6 to 8 months long, working with the patient to help them improve their health, and so then people go on semi-annual or annual visit after that, kind of like more of a maintenance kind of situation.
Yes.
But there's a lot of people in the program, and we kind of have to wait for someone to finish before I can get more people in. And so there's always room, but it's getting really more and more difficult because
Getting
I've been up
tight.
here working. I mean, seriously, like my office has no windows. I'm in the middle of my clinic. I'm an outdoor guy. And
Yeah,
I've been
you
up
are.
here 9 and 10 and 11 o'clock at night getting off of a Zoom call with a patient. I mean, it's
Yeah.
really gotten crazy. And so I'm trying to protect my health and my quality of life while at the same time helping other people improve theirs. And so I appreciate you asking that, Samantha. Tell them to go to drcurrie.com, and at least that's a starting point.
Yeah, it is. And guys, listen to me. What he's trying to tell you is, why is he so busy? Because we are exposed to chemicals right now. We have no business being exposed at these levels. We were talking last night, and I was, asking Dr. Currie his professional opinion about heavy metals. And he said, you'll be shocked when you find out, what I have found. So, what have you found?
All right. So heavy metals in general, and we'll get to the one like you said, which ones do you see? They're everywhere. And so it could be mercury from amalgams, right? In teeth, fillings. Now, obviously, there's a lot of people out there that will say that that can't cause problems, and good for them. Everybody has an opinion. Okay.
Right?
So the reality is we're all, like I said, going to come in contact with metals, and it's how healthy your body is. It's going to determine whether or not you can get help internally with that detoxification process. But one of the ones that I really kind of latched onto was lithium, because lithium isn't metabolized and detoxed in the liver. The kidneys actually have to handle lithium.
Ooh,
Okay. So a lot of these others, the liver can help with those, but lithium gets passed on to the kidneys, and then we can have big, big problems. Now, lithium, it's an alkali metal. It's actually a salt metal. Okay. Um, and so it's the same as sodium, potassium, and copper. It has a plus charge on it. And so the lithium's not a heavy metal, right? But it's used in batteries. It's naturally found in the environment. And so, like I said, it does have the positive charge, but it gets passed on to the kidneys. And so it's found in rock ores. It's found in the batteries, the EV cars now that they're doing, the batteries for those,
yeah.
in power plants. mobile phones, laptops, cameras, but then the EVs, like I said. And so the other thing is that it's used to treat bipolar disorder. Okay,
Yes.
that's one of the most common uses for it because they believe that it inhibits the neurotransmitters and so on at the synaptic level. It just I was looking some things up, and Carrie Fisher, the Princess Leia in Star Wars, right? She had bipolar and talked about how she did lithium therapy and that it made her gain weight and that she was body shamed because the lithium did that. But then remember what we were talking about earlier, Samantha, about storing fat.
Oh my gosh, wait, when you said that, my brain went, boom.
Yep.
So
Uh-huh.
basically, she poisoned herself. They poisoned her with, with the, oh my
Yeah,
gosh.
I can't say that, but
You can't, but I can, folks. That's what happened to her.
but it's interesting. Like most of my patients come in, and heavy metal testing is not my number one. I do usually do that at some point in their treatment plan later on. Okay. But most of my patients lose weight as they're getting healthier, as their
Yeah.
detox systems are getting healthier. And people come in and say, I have one patient, she said last week, she said, I was not able to lose a cotton picking pound for like 17 years, not a single pound. And she's already lost quite a bit of weight. And it's pretty common, but you're getting the body where it can start eliminating these toxins. And
Yeah,
then there's not such a need to store the fat.
that's right.
Okay. And so there's certain medications out right now that are going to keep me in business, I think, for the rest of my career because people are losing weight and they're doing this and they're doing that. But then the side effects that are coming down the line are going to be catastrophic.
Yeah,
It's
I
like
think
watching
you're right.
dominoes fall. Yeah. And
I
so,
think you're right. And it hurts
yeah,
my heart, Keith, that we are so programmed in this country that the first thing that you do is run to the doctor. That's it. It's the first thing that you do. And guys, I'm going to quote what everybody probably thinks is my favorite Bible verse, and it probably is one of them. My people perish for lack of knowledge. Just because somebody offers you a quick fix, it does not mean that it's actually going to help. And unfortunately, like he said, there are so many things coming down the pipeline that are literally going to have catastrophic health issues long term for people. And as more people wake up from the brainwashing of watching commercials, tell you that this little pill is going to fix all your problems, but then you don't pay attention to the scroll on the bottom of the screen saying it may cause blank, 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 blank. Well, it probably is going to cause that. But Keith, okay, so we know lithium. That's like something we run into a lot. What's the next metal that you see is probably fixing to start playing a large issue in how we are here, like in the country?
actually, if it's okay, before we move to the next one, I'd love to talk a little bit more about lithium, even because
Yeah,
it's
go
like
ahead.
legit. Okay. People who are on low salt diets, low sodium diets, like people who have high blood pressure, for example, or they're having swelling in their legs and their feet from water retention, soft tissue
Yeah,
edema, and swelling. Those people, a lot of them will take prescription diuretics. Well, if someone is on a diuretic, that can actually perpetuate more lithium toxicity because they're losing water. And then whenever the water leaves out of the body, then the lithium gets more concentrated if they have lithium in their system. And then they're lo and behold, they can become like straight up more toxic just because they're losing water. So if they actually if they have um, low sodium, low potassium. Like there's so many things that are there. I just kind of blanked out a little bit because there's so many directions that my mind wants to go
right.
with this. But we know that dehydration, vomiting, diarrhea, people who are on the prescription diuretics, people who drink coffee. That's what I was thinking of a second ago. People who are drinking coffee or things with caffeine in them. Guess what? They're losing water. They're losing
I
water. They're
mean,
getting dehydrated. But guess what? If it's not lithium and it's one of the other metals, because whenever I run metal testing on patients, they're always there. It's just that they might be in the green zone or the yellow zone. Maybe they're not in the red, and sometimes they are in the red zone. But the metals are going to be there because, like I said, they're everywhere in our environment. But how can your body handle them? Well, guess what? If you're if you're dehydrated, or if you're having some issues with diarrhea or some other issues, or you're taking medications to try to control blood pressure and you're losing water because of those, then those chemicals are getting more concentrated in your body.
Oh, I need to start drinking more water because here recently in the last 6 months, my joints are very tight. And when I wake up in the morning, I hurt like my feet, and I'm too young. I'll be 50 this year, but I'm not old enough to be stooped over, you know? And I told Steven, I said, my body's throwing free radicals. I knew enough to know that, you know, that something's wrong somewhere. I'm either not getting enough water or I'm introducing entirely too many toxins into my system. And
Probably
my
some of both.
body's, yeah, my body's having an issue with it.
Yeah,
Definitely
some
is.
of both. I mean, my patients are all required to drink quite a bit of water. It's part of the plan. We have a systematized plan that I put in place into action for my patients, and water is an important part of it because we want to dilute down the chemicals. And I tell my patients, hey, look, when you're living in the bathroom, you can cuss me at 2 or 3 or 4 in the morning if you want to, when you're having to get up and use the restroom. After a while, your body starts retaining that water. But in the beginning, it has a hard time with it. So you're going to be urinating a lot. But then guess what? You're eliminating toxins when you do.
That's
That's
right.
take that as a victory, right? Even though you're having to do that in the beginning. The other thing is that lithium loves the thyroid and the pituitary gland. Okay,
Ooh,
it blocks TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone. So now the metabolism gets slow and sluggish. So going back to fat storage, people who are hypothyroid, low thyroid function, their metabolism is slow. So then they're going to gain weight, but then they're also going to have brain fog. They're going to have low energy. A lot of them are going to have constipation. A lot of them, it just goes on and on and on. The other thing that we didn't talk about before we even got into lithium is more like the overview of metals. Okay. If there's toxicity and earlier signs of metal toxicity are going to be GI stress and discomfort, gastrointestinal things like nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, a loss of appetite or lack of appetite, headaches, frequent thirst. If someone, we were just talking about water, and that's what reminded me of that, is that people who are thirsty all the time and they just got to get water, got to get water, got to get water. A lot of times that's because they could be having some early signs of some metal exposure or
yeah.
storage in their body. Then once we move on to late toxicity, so the more advanced signs and symptoms, that's going to get into nervous system problems like confusion and balance problems, ataxia, tremors like resting tremors. Someone may not have Parkinson's disease, but they could have low-grade tremors. Well, maybe they got some metals being stored in their body. Seizures, problems with coordination, increased urination, those are the most common late stage symptoms. But I mean, straight up neurological symptoms, and that's a big, big deal. And how many people out there are taking thyroid medications? Lots, lots. Do they feel better? Maybe, maybe
No.
not, right? I mean, what's going on? What, they don't know why. I always say good doctors know what to do, great doctors know why. They don't know why their thyroid's not working because maybe they haven't had enough testing to figure it out, or maybe they aren't going to a doctor that knows how to interpret the test to then help them figure it out what to do. I mean, there's so many different things going on there, but there's always a reason why. Okay, that's the
Keith,
big, big deal.
let me ask you a question. I'm running our conversation live on my other channel, and somebody said, I know I'm going to pronounce this wrong. Ayurveda, Ayurveda will help. I don't know what that is though.
Yeah, you know, here's my thing. Like even on my own YouTube channel or anything like that, I don't give any patient advice or patient
Right.
care. Nothing that we have said today has been advice to a single person watching this. This doesn't constitute a doctor-patient relationship. So anytime anyone asks me a clinical question or anything like that, there's a million different things out there. There's not a single day that goes by that someone doesn't meet with me for an appointment and say, Dr. Currie, have you heard of XYZ supplement?
Right.
Have you heard of this brand? Have you heard of that? There's a
Right.
million of them out there. There's also a million different doctors that say that they do functional medicine. Well, okay, that, so be it. But have you heard of this one? Have you heard of that one? No, I haven't. I spend my own time trying to learn stuff about what I do, not learn stuff about what other people are doing. And
I was
so
about to
it's one of
say
those
that.
situations where can't really comment on that, Samantha. Sorry about it to your viewer, but it's just the truth of it.
No,
And
that's okay. I didn't know what it was. I didn't know if you'd ever heard of that. But that's what I want people to realize. We're talking in generalizations, folks. What we want you to understand is that your environment is naturally and unnaturally full of heavy metals. What Dr. Curry's trying to do is give you the signs, early warning signs, late warning signs, and then direct you into common sense like steps to take, right? So we've talked to you guys already about lithium. We've talked to you about with your liver, how it functions and why people are getting sick so often. We've talked to you about the the lack of nutrition found in our food, which is why he was talking to you earlier about like supplemental vitamins and minerals to help you until I believe you start growing your own food, right? Take responsibility for your own food, folks.
So you just actually led me into something else, Sam.
Yeah, go
Check this
ahead. So
out.
say what you want to say.
Iron. I decided I wanted to talk a little bit about iron because think about it. I mean, there's a lot of people out there with anemia. There's different people with different health conditions. But then there's a lot of people that say, oh, you know what? You can take the iron, cook your food in an iron skillet, right? And you'll be all right. Well, iron is a heavy metal. So some of these other things like salt, for example, is a lower order metal. We need metals because our proteins are shaped. They're bound together with low order metals. It's the heavy metals, when you get those that come in, that start denaturing and changing this three-dimensional shape of the proteins. And then you get protein clumping or clustering, or the enzymes can't work right because they're protein derivatives. Like it's what happens with these heavy metals that keep the body from being able to heal and repair. And so iron is a heavy metal, and it has associated with it what's called the hydroxyl ion. That's an OH negative. That is the single most potent free radical in the human body, is the hydroxyl ion associated with iron. So you can get way too much iron if you're not careful, and the iron levels of a skillet may be good for one person, but might not be good for another person. Iron stores in tissues, so it can store in the heart. The tissue storage form of iron is called ferritin. Okay, and so it can store in the heart, the joints, the organs, break them down. If ferritin goes over a level of 500, then that's causing imminent, in the moment, joint and organ destruction. Now, there are some people that have a genetic disease called hemochromatosis. And in those individuals, they're going to probably have to do some bloodletting and those kinds of things to get the iron overload off of their system. But the thing that's interesting is that iron is also ferritin, I should say, which is the tissue storage form of iron, is an acute phase reactant. So if someone's inflamed in their body and their body's dealing with some acute type of inflammatory event, there's this mechanism in the body called the iron withholding defense mechanism. It sounds like a ballistic missile system or something
It
like
does.
that. The
Like
iron
an
withholding,
Israel thing, like the
yeah,
Iron Dome.
yeah. And so the iron withholding defense mechanism is when the body thinks it's in a state of crisis. Well, guess what? White blood cells need iron to function, to do their thing, to get
Breathe, right?
produced. Red blood cells, the hemoglobin component is iron. So that's the iron containing component in the red blood cell. And that's what binds oxygen to get tissues, your brain, your nerves, everything oxygen. So whenever the body's in a state of crisis, those acute phase reactants, which ferritin is one of them, will start going up. Well, if someone's a 200 or a 300 or 400, they may not be a 500 and be having imminent joint breakdown and organ destruction or iron deposition in the organs. But guess what? It's still too high and it's causing problems. But remember, it's an acute inflammatory reactor, acute phase reactant. Inflammation can cause that to happen. So if
Right.
someone's body is inflamed, then it can just say, hey, you know what? I'm going to start sequestering and storing this iron. And then next thing you know, you got iron overload and you're having all these hydroxyl ions damage cells and tissues inside your body. And so iron is a favorite one of mine because I like to talk with patients about it because it's a test that I do on every patient. I look at the complete iron profile, but I also test ferritin because there have been a lot of people that have come in that the iron looked fine. They weren't anemic. Nothing was going on there. Their iron panel looked good, but guess what? They didn't know that their ferritin was jacked through the roof and that they were in line to maybe potentially have some serious health problems down the line.
Wow. Wow. Because
Yep.
wait, you always hear I'm anemic. I'm especially, okay, guys. So if you're going through menopause, and you're at the end of your womanly natural cycle, you might not have, a menstrual cycle for 6 months, and then you might bleed for 6 weeks, right? Like that's a normal ending to a woman's ability to have children. But for our younger women moving into the cycle, we know for a fact that the growth hormones, the antibiotics, um, all the chemicals being pumped into the meat and the vegetables your daughters are eating is causing problems in our young women that we've never had before, I don't believe. And so I'm seeing, young women, especially when their cycle hits, I can see it on them. And I know this may sound odd, but I'm going to point it out. When I'm in a store and I walk past a young woman who's currently on her cycle, I can smell iron. I've noticed that a lot. And I told my husband it's not a dirty smell, but I can tell you that she's on her cycle because I can smell the iron. It's that strong. So it makes you wonder how many people may actually not be anemic, but have too much iron.
Yeah, there's so many things to unpackage there, but what I can tell you that's kind of interesting that I know you probably haven't thought of is that fat cells, they're called adipocytes, but fat cells are endocrine producers. So they produce hormones, right? So that's the other part about that is there's pheromones. Like I always jokingly say that my brother, John, he's really, really handsome. He's tall,
Yeah,
and
he's so
all the women,
funny.
yeah, all the women have always loved John. And so I tell people, John got the pheromones that attract women. I got the pheromones that attract mosquitoes.
Yeah, right.
Which, remember when we were eating the crawfish on your back porch that time?
Yes.
And I held the citronella candle in my hand and the mosquito came up and landed on my arm?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, I mean, you know that about me. So that's the other part about that is we also, women, their limbic system is really, really in tune.
Yes.
And so from that standpoint, you may not just be smelling the iron component, you may be picking up on some hormonal effects as well that are
Yeah,
making
I
their way
could
into the
be.
air.
I
Yeah,
just
it's
always
possible.
noticed that. I thought I was odd. I'll tell you something else. When my babies were young and they would get an infection, I could always smell it on
Yeah.
them. Like if it was sinus or their ear, I would be able to smell it. And Stephen laughs at me, but I can smell if he's got an infected tooth in his mouth. I think my dad told me there's something, it's called something. Some people can smell certain bacteria, it's just how we're made, so to
Yeah.
speak. But okay, so we have covered lithium and
Hmm.
iron. What about one of the more famous metals being used right now? What if we try for what about cobalt?
Cobalt is used in batteries. You're looking at it's a radioactive tracer. It's used in the oil refinement process. It's a free element. It's produced by reductive smelting. It's hard. It's lustrous. It's gray, but it's used to make, like, we've heard of cobalt blue, right?
Yeah,
It's got the pigment, the blue cobalt. So they use it for jewelry and in paints, and then also sometimes to tint glass. Cardiomyopathy, like symptoms of toxicity, cardiomyopathy. That's a problem when the heart gets too big and has problems being able to push blood out. Okay.
yeah,
Some people will have nerve conditions. Like we said, most of these things are going to cause nerve conditions in the latter stages. Thicker blood, which obviously can be a real, real problem. Once again, thyroid problems and visual changes. Those are some of the most common with that.
yeah.
Um, the other one that I was going to talk about next, actually, I made a note here for myself. Silver oxide.
Yes,
You said that you were interested in silver oxide, and
yes.
so you've heard the term or the expression, um, "You were born with a silver spoon in your mouth." Okay,
Yeah,
royals back in the day, they were said to be called blue bloods because they would always eat with silver spoons, and their lips would turn blue because silver. You've heard of blue man syndrome from silver?
yes.
Yeah. So a lot of people will take a whole lot of colloidal silver, for example, and they'll get that blue man syndrome. And so
No.
that's where silver can come in, as it can build up in the body and then you start seeing those kinds of things happen. And so now specifically when silver, you mentioned silver oxide. I mean, we've come in contact with silver our whole lives. We wear silver jewelry. There's silver everywhere. Okay.
Right.
But so many of these things, like the different heavy metals, for example, we talked about free radicals earlier. The process of oxidation is very important to understand here because LDL cholesterol, let's just use that as an example. People talk about LDL cholesterol being the bad cholesterol. And when your levels are too high or when your total cholesterol is too high, they'll put you on the statin drug to try to lower your cholesterol. Well, guess what? We need LDL cholesterol because if we don't have it, we'll die. LDL cholesterol is very important. It's a taxi cab. It carries proteins and other items throughout the body where it needs to go. And it is important to repair tissues with LDL. The difference between LDL and HDL is that HDL has a higher protein content in it. So it's called high density lipoprotein or lipoprotein. So if it does a repair, it's got more protein in it. And so it's going to be a stronger repair. But LDL has more fat in it. And so it's going to be a weak repair or a shoddy repair. So if someone, for example, has like high levels of homocysteine in their blood, which is a super free radical, homocysteine is floating down through the artery, punching holes in the inner lining of the artery, causing punch lesions, making them look like Swiss cheese. Well, then, because we go back to cardiovascular disease being the #1 killer in America, and how many
That's
people know
right.
what their homocysteine levels are? Hardly any. Okay. So
I
if your
didn't even know that
homocysteine
was a
levels,
thing.
right. So if that's doing that, then there's a hole in the artery in the inner lining. It's called the endothelium. It's a very delicate, slippery lining on the inside of the artery. So then there's now a hole there. It's like a pothole in the road. Well, what's the body going to do if there's if I got really mad and punched a hole in the sheetrock here behind me? Well, guess what? There's a hole there. Well, do you think my wife is going to let that hole stay there forever? No, she's going to be like, you got to do something. That you can't leave that hole there in the wall. So
Right.
I'm going to go get some spackle and some stuff and start filling in that hole. Well, that's what the body does to make a repair, but it's going to do it with good cholesterol or bad cholesterol, but it's still going to make that repair. It's going to patch the hole, spackle it. Okay. Now, the difference between an HDL repair and an LDL repair is that the HDL is going to be more like gorilla tape or duct tape. It's going to be a strong quality repair that'll probably last. LDL repair, since it's fatty, is going to be more like Scotch tape. It's going to be a weak repair. Okay. It's not going to lay up a strong repair. That's why we want more LDL and less LDL. But the whole thing is LDL really isn't all that big of a deal unless it's a small particle size. Because if it's a small particle LDL, then it can fill in and patch the hole easier. So that's a concern. So we want to know if someone has small, medium, or large particle LDLs.
Right.
But then the other part of it is if it gets oxidized. So you mentioned at the very beginning, free radicals and all of that. So now when we have an LDL particle that gets oxidized, it becomes damaging to the tissues, just much the same as like people who are taking fish oil that don't know that they need to be taking cofactors because the fish oil can get oxidized and cause problems.
That's right.
So
And
there's a
there you
lot.
go, Keith. And that's what I want all of you to know. I am all about self-healing. You know my dad, Keith, amazing man. I went through a period of time, folks, when they were working in my mouth, where by the eighth surgery, the skin was so frayed and there was nothing left they could do, and the bone was exposed. And my daddy looked at me, and I will never forget this. He goes, Pumpkin, you only have one choice, and that is heal yourself. And it did something to me. It changed the way I looked at things. But I'm also going to tell you another quick story. I thought I was going to treat my beloved German Shepherd for fleas without giving him toxins from the vet. And I accidentally, quite possibly, caused the neurological damage I'm now dealing with him. Folks, sometimes we have just enough knowledge to hurt ourselves. Okay. So that is where an expert in the field, doesn't matter what you want to take or how you want to treat yourself. You need somebody that you has more knowledge than you to talk to before you just start taking supplements by the handful, mixing them together, not taking the right things with the right things. And the next thing I know, you've created some kind of weird acid in your stomach and you've got a tumor. Oh, because you took a whole bunch of over-the-counter pills. Be careful. Tylenol, everybody can get it. There's no restriction. The most deadly substance in the world is Tylenol. So that's what I'm trying to tell you. Just because you can get your hands on a supplement doesn't mean you should just be taking them without somebody like Dr. Currie overseeing what you're taking, the amounts you're taking, and what you're taking together. Okay. So I want y'all to really, if you take nothing else, hear me now. Be under the care of a physician before you put a bunch of pills in your mouth. All right, Dr. Currie, take it away. That was
No, I
my
mean,
don't be dumb statement.
yeah, my thing is with all of that
Hey,
is,
sweetie.
like I said earlier, if you're not testing, you're guessing. If you don't know
That's
where the
right.
nutritional deficiencies are, then how would you know? And so for me, I look at certain key things. There's one test that I run that actually checks for nutrients and the value, the level of the different nutrients. So everyone is different, like I said, but there are things that each person can benefit from potentially, and then things that may not be right for that person. And so that's what I love about what I do is it's a concierge, individualized, personalized level of health care. And I get to know my patients. We
That's
build
right.
relationships. There's the long haul. People stay with me. It's incredible, and I just enjoy it. I enjoy it so much, and I think people, I'm going to have patients. I've already actually had a patient ask me if I would get her the link for this because she wants to watch it, and my patients
Aw,
support me. Yeah, and so you'll probably get a new subscriber, Samantha,
yay. I
and
love
maybe more than
subscribers.
one. Yeah, and
Good,
so that'll be
good.
good. And but it's there's just it's important to know what's going on with your body. Okay.
That's right.
And when you go to a traditional doctor, a lot of times they're doing tests that maybe aren't really what somebody necessarily needs, or maybe there's not enough testing done, or maybe the interpretation of the test results. There's just a lot of different things that you have to trust and hope that you're in good hands. And how would you know? You weren't trained in this, right?
Right. You're not. That's the thing, guys. Listen, in my opinion, most, and this is my opinion, so I can say this, most medical doctors, they know how to do this real well. And then you have to go back because that didn't work. So you got 10 minutes to tell him how terrible these made you feel. He's going to roll his eyes behind your back, right? He's going to do this. That's where the medical industry is now at in America. They want to keep you. If if I cure you or I heal you, you're not coming back. That's that's the catch. And that's where people, I don't care how nice your doctor is. I don't care what a great bedside manner they have. If you don't keep coming back, they don't get paid. So I just want to point that out to you. Um, learn learn to go to a doctor like Dr. Currie that's going to look at you and say, look, let's get you better so I don't ever have to see you again. Like, you're a great person. I'll see you at church on Sunday, but I don't need you. I'm busy. I need to get you out of here so I can roll in the next person, get them better, and roll them out. It's He's not building a business of the same people coming back. He's in the business of let's get you better. So you can move and the next person can get better. Folks, that's actually the definition of a doctor: do no harm. Okay. So I want you to take that to heart today as you listened to us kind of break down some metals and talk about nutrition and what's going on. Do you have any closing thoughts, Dr. Currie, that you want to make
No,
sure you get home for them?
yeah, my big thing is just everybody has to walk their own path.
Yeah.
People are going to pay now or they're going to pay later. Sickness is not cheap. And guess what? Sickness sucks. It's not fun either. Okay. You
No.
feel miserable. What good is all the money in the world if you're laid up in a bed and can't go anywhere and do anything? One patient told me one time that the four walls in his living room just felt like they kept crowding in on him.
Oh,
And I mean, that's just no way to live. And so the wonderful part is being self-healing organisms. God created our bodies to be able to heal and repair. And so from that standpoint, sometimes we just need to figure out what our bodies need. And whether someone, finds their way to me at some point or they go to a different doctor, I just tell people to be open-minded, recognize that, there's a lot of different options that people have out there, and most of the time they don't know that.
No, they don't. They think that they have to go to somebody that has literally like, like I said, when I said medical doctor, I made a point of saying that because a lot of people do not realize that. But my sister and my brother-in-law, Dr. Currie and Dr. Currie, did the exact same training a medical doctor does, except they didn't take the pharmaceutical part of it. Isn't that right? That's like the only thing you guys didn't do was take the pharmaceutical prescription end of it.
Well, in chiropractic school, it's kind of interesting because it's funny because I'm a chiropractor, but the patients that come to me, if it's kind of almost embarrassing to say this, but I'm like, there's only so much time in the day, like I said earlier. And I do treat people with severe neck and back pain and sciatica and spinal stenosis. Someone flew in here from California a couple of weeks ago, from Alameda, California. So, I mean, people come, okay?
Yeah.
And so my spinal practice is very, very unique. I treat a lot of people who have had multiple failed neck and back surgeries, spinal injections, so on and so on, nerve root ablations that didn't work for them. And so there's that side of my practice, but then there's the functional medicine side of my practice as well. And so it's kind of like two different practices under one roof.
That's right.
And my it's really kind of interesting how it all played out. My wife signed me up for the first functional medicine seminar years ago, and I went. I didn't even know what it was, and then I was sitting on the back row, just kind of hanging out, getting my hours. And
Right.
this guy was absolutely incredible. He knew more than any doctor I'd ever heard speak before. And I got to be real. I'm a chiropractor, like I said. I tell my patients to go see a chiropractor where they live. Like that's where I was going a minute ago, is where patients live. I'm like, look, go see your chiropractor. We're going to work on things like this, but where you live, go see your chiropractor because it is an important part of a healthy lifestyle, in
Yes,
my
it is.
opinion. But ultimately, I was sitting on the back row thinking to myself as this doctor was lecturing, I'm like, man, this guy's a chiropractor. Who is he trying to impress? Like people aren't going to him with lung problems or with pulmonary issues and this or that. Like, what is going on here? But he was so good, Samantha, that he reeled me in. And then later is whenever I actually realized that it was a functional medicine seminar, and that was the first one that I went through. And now it's crazy. I mean, it's nuts how many hours I will get in a single year. And then besides that, all of the self-education I'm learning that's
That's right.
apart from all of that. But that kicked it all off. And it had to be 100% God-led thing because my wife signed me up for it and I didn't even know what it was.
Right. That's right. And it's the truth. Well, look, I appreciate you taking, I know you're busy. I know both you and Natalie are, and I greatly appreciate you guys taking the time to help educate the people on my platform. We are so different, in my opinion, of every other YouTube platform out there. Everybody knows YouTube decided they weren't going to pay me anymore. So when I do this because out of genuine love and concern. And I, like you, am a true educator at heart. And I want you not to perish because you didn't have the knowledge. So, guys, he told you how to reach out to him. I'm going to have that in comments. Tell us one more time, Dr. Currie, how are they going to get in touch with you?
It's drcurrie.com, DOCTORCURRIE.com.
Okay.
Thanks, Samantha.
You're
Great
very
interview.
welcome. Yeah, I think so too. I'll talk to you guys later. Bye bye.